Amara Lewis kept her hand steady on the wheel that quiet Georgia morning, with nothing but an encrypted flash drive and a classified mission. But when the blue lights flared behind her and Deputy Kyle Murdoch ordered her out like she was already guilty, Amara stayed calm because she'd been in worse situations. And when they found that flash drive and she finally revealed those 3 words, Central Intelligence Agency, the air froze because these small-town cops had no idea they'd just intercepted a covert operative on a federal case, and what started as a simple traffic stop was about to expose a conspiracy so dangerous it would shake the entire state. And today they were going to learn what happens when you pick a fight with someone trained to operate in the shadows. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The morning sun stretched across the Georgia highway like melted butter, warm and golden against the cracked asphalt. Amara Lewis kept her hands steady at 10 and 2, her eyes moving in practiced intervals between the rearview mirror, the side mirrors, and the empty road ahead. The old gray sedan hummed beneath her, unremarkable and forgettable, exactly as it should be. Her phone buzzed once on the passenger seat. She didn't look down. She didn't need to. The pattern of the vibration told her everything. 3 short pulses, 1 long. Operation Wildfire was active. Amara exhaled slowly, her fingers flexing once against the steering wheel. She'd been in worse situations than this. Much worse. A simple retrieval mission in a backwater Georgia town should have been routine. Get in, make contact with the informant, secure the flash drive, get out. Clean. Simple. No complications. The blue lights in her rearview mirror suggested otherwise. She checked her speed. 53 in a 55 zone. Her registration was current, insurance valid. The car was clean, inside and out, scrubbed of anything that could draw attention. Yet there they were, lights spinning, closing the distance between them with deliberate intent. Amara signaled right and eased onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires. She rolled down her window halfway, placed both hands on the wheel where they could be seen, and waited. Her heartbeat stayed even. Her breathing remained controlled. This was just another variable, just another complication to manage. The cruiser stopped 20 feet behind her. 2 officers emerged. The first was a white man in his mid-30s, thick-shouldered and moving with the kind of swagger that came from too much authority and not enough oversight. His nameplate read Murdoch, Deputy Kyle Murdoch. The second officer was younger, a white woman with blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She moved more carefully, her eyes scanning the scene with an uncertainty that hadn't yet been beaten out of her by years on the job. Officer Jenna Brooks, according to her badge. Murdoch approached the driver's side window, one hand resting on his belt near his weapon. Brooks hung back slightly, positioned near the passenger side, her posture tense. "License and registration," Murdoch said. Not asked. Said. "Good morning, officer," Amara replied, her voice calm and pleasant. "May I ask what the problem is?" "You got a broken taillight, license and registration." Amara glanced at her rearview mirror. Her taillight had been fine when she'd checked the car this morning. She'd checked everything. But arguing wouldn't help. It never did. "I'm going to reach into my glove compartment now to get my registration," she said clearly, moving her hand slowly toward the dashboard. "My license is in my purse on the passenger seat. Hands where I can see them." Murdoch's voice cracked like a whip, his hand moving to his holster. Amara froze, both hands back on the wheel immediately. Brooks shifted her weight, her eyes darting between Amara and her partner. "Sir, I was just reaching for my registration like you asked," Amara said, keeping her voice level. Her pulse had kicked up now, not from fear but from the sharp awareness that this situation was sliding sideways fast. "Step out of the vehicle," Murdoch ordered. "Officer, I haven't done anything wrong." I was complying with your request. I said step out of the vehicle. Now. Amara's jaw tightened for just a fraction of a second before she smoothed her expression back to neutral. She opened the door slowly and stepped out onto the gravel shoulder. The morning sun felt too bright suddenly, too exposing. Murdoch grabbed her shoulder and spun her toward the car. Hands on the vehicle, spread your legs. This is completely unnecessary, Amara said, but she complied. Brooks had moved closer now, watching with growing unease. Murdoch's hands moved over her sides, down her legs, rough and invasive. When he reached her jacket pocket, he paused. His fingers closed around something small and rectangular. He pulled out the encrypted flash drive, no bigger than his thumb, matte black and unmarked. Well, what do we have here? He held it up to the light, turning it over. What's on this? That's personal property, Amara said. Looks like evidence to me. Murdoch's grin was ugly. Evidence of what? We'll find out soon enough. Brooks, call for backup. Jenna hesitated, her hand hovering over her radio. Kyle, maybe we should just write the ticket and... Call for backup, Officer Brooks. That's an order. Jenna's lips pressed into a thin line, but she reached for her radio. Dispatch, this is Brooks. We need backup at mile marker 73 on Route 40. Traffic stop. Amara closed her eyes briefly. This was escalating in exactly the way she'd hoped to avoid. The flash drive contained encrypted intelligence that had taken 3 months to acquire. Intelligence that linked a sitting senator to illegal weapons shipments running through this very county. She couldn't let it disappear into some rural evidence locker. I need to make a phone call, Amara said. You'll get your call at the station, Murdoch replied, pocketing the flash drive. Within 10 minutes, 2 more cruisers arrived, followed by a black and white SUV with sheriff written across the side. A man in his late 50s climbed out, his khaki uniform pressed crisp, his silver hair combed back. Sheriff Don Keegan had the kind of face that belonged on election posters, friendly and trustworthy. Amara didn't trust him for a second. What have we got here, Deputy? Keegan asked, his voice carrying the slow drawl of someone who'd never left Georgia. Broken taillight stop, sir. She was acting suspicious, and I found this on her. Murdoch held up the flash drive. Keegan's eyes fixed on the small device, and something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe. Or concern. He recovered quickly, turning his attention to Amara. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to cooperate with my officers here. We just want to figure out what's going on. Amara met his gaze steadily. She was done playing along. She reached slowly into her jacket's inner pocket, watching as every officer's hand moved toward their weapons. She pulled out a worn black leather wallet and flipped it open. Central Intelligence Agency, she said quietly. The air seemed to freeze. Murdoch stared at the credentials, his face going through several shades of emotion before settling on disbelief. That's fake, he said flatly. Jenna had moved closer, craning her neck to see. Amara watched her eyes widen. The younger officer had seen real federal credentials before. She knew what she was looking at. Sheriff, I think... Jenna started. Let me see that, Keegan interrupted, holding out his hand. Amara handed over the wallet. He studied it carefully. Too carefully, like he was buying time to think. Finally, he looked up. We'll need to verify this. Of course, Amara said. Call Langley. The main switchboard can confirm my credentials within 5 minutes. Phone lines have been acting up all morning, Keegan said smoothly. Tell you what, why don't you come down to the station while we sort this out? Make sure everything's legitimate. It wasn't a request. Amara's mind raced through her options. She could invoke federal authority, demand they contact her superiors immediately, threaten jurisdictional consequences. But something about Keegan's expression told her he'd already made up his mind. He'd already decided how this was going to play out, and more concerning, He didn't seem surprised to see her credentials. "I want that flash drive secured as evidence," Keegan said to Murdoch, "and I want this woman transported to the station for identity verification." "Sir, if she's really CIA," Jenna began. "If she's really CIA, then verification won't be a problem, will it?" Keegan's smile didn't reach his eyes. Amara watched as Keegan walked back to his SUV, the flash drive now in his possession. He pulled out his phone, turned away, and made a call. She couldn't hear the words, but she could read his body language. Tense. Urgent. He kept glancing back at her. She caught 3 words when he raised his voice slightly. "The Langley woman." Her blood went cold. He knew. He'd been expecting her. This wasn't a random traffic stop. This was an interception. Murdoch pulled out handcuffs. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." "That's completely unnecessary," Amara said. "I've identified myself as a federal agent. I'm not resisting." "You're in our custody until we verify your identity," Murdoch said, clearly enjoying this. "That means cuffs." The metal clicked around her wrists, tight enough to bite. Amara memorized every face, every exit point, every vehicle position. She counted the officers, noted which ones looked uncomfortable with how this was unfolding. Jenna Brooks avoided her eyes. As they guided her into the back of Murdoch's cruiser, Amara caught sight of something in her side mirror. A black SUV, civilian plates, tinted windows. It had pulled onto the shoulder about 100 yards back. No lights, no movement, just watching. Murdoch climbed into the driver's seat. Brooks took the passenger side. Neither of them had noticed the black SUV. "You're making a serious mistake," Amara said as they pulled back onto the highway. "Save it for the interrogation room," Murdoch replied. Amara leaned back against the seat, her hands bound behind her. She pressed her right ring finger against the base of her ring twice, a deliberate motion. The small device embedded in the silver band activated, sending a coded signal to a satellite passing overhead. Somewhere in Langley, Virginia, a red dot would appear on a secure monitor. They would know she was compromised. In the rearview mirror, she watched the black SUV pull onto the highway and follow at a careful distance. Unknown to the officers in the front seat, unknown even to her. But definitely there. The Wilburn County Sheriff's Station was exactly what Amara expected. A squat brick building that had probably been built in the 70s and hadn't seen a renovation since. The parking lot was half empty, the windows covered with dusty blinds, and the American flag out front hung limp in the still morning air. They walked her through the front entrance, past a reception desk where an older woman looked up with barely concealed curiosity, and down a narrow hallway that smelled of burnt coffee and old paperwork. The interrogation room was at the end, small, windowless. A metal table bolted to the floor and 3 chairs that had seen better days. Murdoch removed her handcuffs and pointed at the chair facing the door. "Sit." Amara sat, rolling her shoulders to ease the tension. Her wrists bore red marks from the cuffs, but she didn't rub them. She folded her hands on the table and waited. Keegan entered 5 minutes later, carrying a manila folder and a bottle of water. He set the water in front of her, unopened, then took the seat across from her. Murdoch leaned against the wall by the door, arms crossed. Jenna stood in the hallway, visible through the small window in the door. "Ms. Lewis," Keegan began, his voice friendly. "Or should I call you Agent Lewis?" "Agent Lewis is fine." "Well, Agent Lewis, I'm sure you understand our position here. We get a lot of folks passing through claiming to be one thing or another. Federal agents, private investigators, bounty hunters. We've even had someone claim to be Secret Service once." He chuckled. Turned out he was wanted in 3 states for check fraud. "I'm sure your verification process is thorough," Amara said evenly. "So let's speed this along. Call the CIA main switchboard. Ask for Office of Security. They'll confirm my credentials within minutes. Like I said, phones are down. Some kind of system outage. Whole county's affected. He spread his hands apologetically. Technology, right? When it works, it's great. When it doesn't, we're back to the Stone Age. Amara's eyes flicked to the corner of the room. A surveillance camera was mounted near the ceiling, its small light blinking red. Standard equipment. But then she noticed something else. A second camera, smaller, partially hidden behind a ceiling tile that hadn't been pushed back into place properly. The angle was wrong for standard security. It was positioned to capture the room from a different perspective, a hidden feed. How long until the phones are back up? She asked. Could be hours, could be tomorrow. Hard to say with these rural systems. Keegan opened the manila folder, though Amara suspected it was empty. He was stalling. The question was why. Murdoch pushed off the wall. Maybe we should talk about why you're really here. What's on that flash drive? That's classified information related to an ongoing federal investigation. See, that's the problem, Murdoch said, moving closer. We get a lot of people saying things are classified, when really they just don't want us to know they're up to something illegal. Deputy Murdoch, I strongly suggest you return my property and allow me to contact my superiors. Interfering with a federal investigation carries serious consequences. Federal investigation? Murdoch snorted. Into what? We're a quiet county. Nothing happens here worth investigating. Amara said nothing. Let him think what he wanted. The less they knew about Operation Wildfire, the better. The flash drive contained shipping manifests, financial transfers, and communications that connected Senator James Caldwell to a weapons smuggling operation, using this county as a waypoint. Small-town law enforcement looking the other way while shipments moved through an old airfield just outside town limits. It was a beautiful setup, really, elegant in its simplicity, and it had been operating for at least 2 years before the CIA caught wind of it. Keegan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stood. Excuse me for a moment. He stepped into the hallway. Through the door window, Amara watched him walk toward the front of the building, phone pressed to his ear. His expression was tense. He nodded several times, then ended the call. Instead of returning to the interrogation room, he headed toward what looked like his private office. 20 minutes passed. Amara sat quietly, her mind working through contingencies. Murdoch stayed at his post by the door, checking his own phone periodically. Jenna had disappeared from the hallway. When Keegan finally returned, he wasn't alone. A man in an expensive gray suit followed him, carrying a leather briefcase. Mid-40s. Fit, with the kind of careful posture that suggested either military background or private security training. His eyes swept the interrogation room with professional assessment before settling on Amara. Agent Lewis, Keegan said, this is Mr. Harrison. He's an attorney representing some local business interests. He'll be observing. An attorney. Amara's jaw tightened. That was a lie. She'd seen enough operatives in her career to recognize one. The question was who he worked for. Caldwell, most likely. Which meant her cover was completely blown. Keegan left with Harrison, and Amara was alone with Murdoch again. Through the door window, she watched Keegan hand over the flash drive to Harrison. The suited man examined it briefly, nodded, and slipped it into his briefcase. Her mission had just been compromised. The evidence she'd spent months cultivating, gone in an instant. You look upset, Murdoch observed. I want to make a phone call, Amara said. That's my right. Sure, once the phones are working. Then bring me a cell phone. Surely someone in this building has a working cell phone. Signal's spotty out here. He shrugged. Probably won't get through anyway. It was all lies. Coordinated, deliberate obstruction. Keegan was in Caldwell's pocket. Probably had been for years. Murdoch, too, most likely. Though he might just be following orders without understanding the bigger picture. She needed to get word to Langley. The tracking signal from her ring would tell them she'd been stationary for over an hour, which would raise flags, but it wouldn't convey the urgency of the situation. The flash drive was in enemy hands, the operation was burned, and she was trapped in a small-town police station with no way to communicate. The door opened. Jenna stepped inside, carrying a paper cup of water. "Thought you might be thirsty," she said quietly. Amara took the cup. "Thank you, Officer Brooks." Jenna glanced at Murdoch, who'd pulled out his phone and was texting someone. She leaned in slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I looked you up. Your credentials are real." Amara's eyes met hers. "Then you know this is wrong." "I know something's wrong," Jenna said. "I just don't know what yet." Before Amara could respond, Murdoch looked up. "Brooks, you're needed at the front desk." Jenna straightened and left without another word. But as she passed through the doorway, Amara saw her slip something into her pocket. A phone. Small. Probably her personal cell. Hope flickered. Jenna was having doubts. Doubts could be worked with. 2 more hours crawled by. Murdoch was eventually replaced by another deputy, a younger man who said nothing and simply stood guard. Keegan made 2 more appearances, each time asking the same questions about why Amara was in town, what her investigation involved, who her contacts were. Each time she gave him the same answer: contact Langley for verification. Around 6 in the evening, the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then the entire building went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in after a few seconds, casting everything in harsh white. The deputy at the door looked confused, reaching for his radio. "Dispatch, what's going on with the power?" Static answered him. "Dispatch, come in." More static. He tried his cell phone. No signal. He muttered a curse and opened the door. "Stay here. Don't move." The moment he disappeared down the hallway, Amara stood and moved to the door window. The station was in chaos, deputies running back and forth trying to figure out what happened. Keegan shouting orders from his office, and outside through the front windows she could see it. The black SUV. Still there, headlights off, waiting in the gathering darkness. Her door opened. Jenna slipped inside and closed it quickly behind her. "We have maybe 2 minutes," she said, pressing a cell phone into Amara's hands. "The power outage is affecting the whole block. Make your call." Amara didn't waste time asking questions. She dialed a number she'd memorized years ago, one that bypassed normal channels and went directly to a secure line at Langley. 3 rings. A click. "Identification," a voice said. "Shadow 7, Amara replied. "Code black, extraction required." "Location confirmed. What's your status?" "Package compromised." "Local law enforcement compromised. Need immediate retrieval." "Understood. Stand by for contact. ETA 48 hours. The line went dead. 48 hours. 2 days. She had to survive 2 days in this station before help arrived. Jenna took the phone back. "What's happening?" "The sheriff is involved in something bigger than either of us," Amara said. "And you just helped a federal agent. That makes you a target, too." Jenna's face went pale. "What do I do?" "Act normal. Don't let them know you helped me. And whatever you do, don't trust Keegan or Murdoch." Footsteps in the hallway. Jenna shoved the phone back in her pocket and moved to the corner, just as the deputy returned. "Power's back," he announced. "Some kind of transformer issue." The overhead lights hummed back to life. Jenna slipped out and Amara returned to her seat. But something had changed. She wasn't helpless anymore. Langley knew she was in trouble. Help was coming. All she had to do was stay alive until it arrived. Late that night, Keegan appeared at her door one final time. His friendly demeanor had evaporated, replaced by something colder, harder. "You think DC cares about you?" he said. "You think they're going to send the cavalry for one agent who got in over her head? They'll leave you here to rot and no one will ever know what happened to you." Amara leaned back in her chair, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Maybe you're right, Sheriff. Maybe they won't come for me." She smiled, cold and sharp. "But they'll burn this town to the ground, finding out why I went dark. And when they do, every secret you're hiding, every dollar you've taken, every law you've broken will come to light. So go ahead. Leave me here. See what happens." Keegan's jaw worked. He wanted to say something, probably wanted to threaten her. But he couldn't. Because deep down, he knew she was right. He left without another word. Amara settled in for a long night. Through the window in the door, she could see Jenna at her desk, pretending to do paperwork. Their eyes met briefly. An understanding passed between them. And outside, in the darkness of the parking lot, the black SUV remained. Silent. Watching. Waiting for something neither Amara nor her captors could yet see coming. The hours after her call to Langley dragged on with agonizing slowness. Amara remained in the interrogation room, counting ceiling tiles, measuring the space between the table and the door, calculating angles and distances. Survival meant preparation, and preparation meant knowing every detail of her environment. Around 3 in the morning, exhaustion pulled her into a fitful half-sleep. Her mind drifted back, unbidden, to 6 months earlier. She'd been sitting in a conference room at Langley, watching grainy surveillance footage on a large screen. Her handler, Director Cole Stanton, stood at the head of the table, his silver hair catching the fluorescent light. "Operation Wildfire," he'd said, clicking to the next slide. "Senator James Caldwell, 20 years in office, clean record, decorated veteran, family man." Another click. "Also running the largest illegal weapons pipeline in the southeastern United States." The screen showed shipping manifests, financial transfers moving through shell corporations, photographs of a rural airfield in Georgia, Wilburn County. "We've been tracking this for 8 months, Stanton continued. "Small shipments, always at night, military-grade weapons disappearing from authorized dealers, reappearing in conflict zones overseas. The operation is sophisticated. Local law enforcement provides cover. The shipments move through what looks like legitimate training supply deliveries." Amara had studied the photographs. The airfield was old, probably unused since the 70s, perfect for clandestine operations. "We have an informant," Stanton said. "Local mechanic who services the planes. He copied files onto a flash drive before his conscience got the better of him. That drive contains everything we need to bring down Caldwell and everyone involved. Your job is simple. Make contact. Retrieve the drive. Extract." Simple. Nothing was ever simple. A hand shaking her shoulder jolted Amara back to the present. Jenna stood over her, looking exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "You need to wake up," Jenna whispered urgently. "They're planning to move you." Amara sat up straight, instantly alert. "When?" "Dawn. Maybe an hour from now. I overheard Keegan on the phone. He said something about taking you to an off-site location for extended questioning." Off-site. That was code for somewhere without witnesses, somewhere people could disappear. "Where's Murdoch?" "Front desk. Keegan's in his office. There are only 3 deputies in the building right now. The night shift is always light." Amara studied Jenna's face. Fear and determination warred there. "Why are you helping me?" Jenna was quiet for a moment. "I joined the force because I wanted to help people, to do the right thing. But the longer I've been here, the more I've seen that doesn't add up. Money changing hands. Keegan making calls he doesn't want anyone to hear. Shipments coming through that old airfield that no one's supposed to talk about." She met Amara's eyes. "I looked up Project Wildfire. Found it scribbled in some notes on Keegan's desk. I don't know what it is, but I know whatever's happening here isn't right. If you help me, there's no going back," Amara said. "They'll know it was you." "I know." Jenna's voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. "But I'd rather live with that than live with doing nothing." Amara made a decision. Trust was a risk, but right now Jenna Brooks was the only ally she had. There's a service exit near the evidence room. Can you get us there without being seen? I think so. But what about the cameras? The main cameras feed to the front desk, but there's a hidden camera in this room that feeds somewhere else, probably directly to whoever Keegan reports to. We need to create a distraction that takes out both systems. Jenna thought for a moment. The breaker box is in the basement. If I trip the right switches, I can kill power to the security system without affecting the emergency lights. How long will that give us? 5 minutes, maybe 10 before someone gets it working again. That'll have to be enough. Amara stood, stretching muscles that had been still too long. Get me to the evidence room first. I need to see if the flash drive is still there. Jenna hesitated. It's not. I saw Harrison leave with it yesterday evening, but there might be something else. She led Amara quietly down the hallway, past closed office doors and darkened break rooms. The evidence room was small, lined with metal shelves holding labeled bags and boxes. Jenna unlocked a cabinet and pulled out a plastic bag containing Amara's personal effects. Phone, wallet, keys, and something else. A small locker key with a number stamped on it. 42. This was in your jacket pocket, Jenna said. We logged it but didn't think much of it. Amara's heart beat faster. The locker key. Her informant had mentioned a backup plan, a failsafe in case something went wrong with the primary exchange. She'd forgotten about it in the chaos of the arrest. There's a bus station 3 miles from here, Amara said. That's where this goes. Then that's where we're going. Jenna pulled a set of keys from her belt. We'll take my patrol car. Make it look like I'm transporting you to another facility. They'll follow us. I know. But at least we'll have a head start. They moved back through the station, Jenna checking around each corner before proceeding. At the service exit, she paused. Wait here. I'm going to the basement to kill the power. When the lights go out, you have 60 seconds to get to my car. It's the cruiser closest to this door. I'll be right behind you. Amara nodded. Jenna disappeared down a stairwell, leaving her alone in the dim hallway. She counted her heartbeats, steady and even. 30 seconds. 45. The lights died. Amara pushed through the service exit into the pre-dawn darkness. The parking lot was quiet, lit only by a single streetlight at the far end. Jenna's cruiser sat 20 feet away. She ran, staying low, and tried the passenger door. Locked. Behind her, shouting erupted inside the building. Someone had noticed the power outage. Flashlight beams swept through windows. The driver's door opened and Jenna slid in, starting the engine. Get in! Amara dove into the passenger seat just as the station's front door burst open. Murdoch stood silhouetted against the emergency lights, his weapon drawn. Brooks! Stop! Jenna threw the car into reverse, tires squealing against asphalt. Murdoch fired twice. The rear window shattered, safety glass exploding inward. Jenna jerked the wheel hard, spinning them around, then floored the accelerator. They shot forward, out of the parking lot and onto the empty street. He's calling it in, Jenna said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Every unit in the county will be looking for us in minutes. Then we need to get to that bus station fast. Amara brushed glass from her hair. How well do you know these back roads? Better than anyone. I grew up here. They raced through the sleeping town, past darkened shops and quiet houses. Jenna killed the lights and turned onto a narrow road that cut through dense forest. The trees closed in on both sides, branches scraping against the car as they flew past. Behind them, red and blue lights appeared. One vehicle, then two. The chase was on. Jenna pushed the cruiser harder, taking turns that sent them sliding across gravel shoulders. Amara braced herself against the dashboard. They're gaining. There's a turnoff ahead. Old logging road. It's rough, but it'll take us directly to the highway. Do it. Jenna yanked the wheel left, and suddenly they were bouncing over roots and rocks, the cruiser's suspension, screaming in protest. The pursuing vehicles hesitated at the turnoff, then followed. But the delay had given Jenna and Amara precious seconds. They burst out of the forest onto a two-lane highway. The bus station was visible ahead, a small building with a flickering neon sign. Jenna aimed for it, then at the last second swerved into the adjacent woods. The cruiser plowed through undergrowth before slamming into a tree. The impact threw Amara forward against her seatbelt. Pain flared in her ribs. Beside her, Jenna groaned, blood running from a cut on her forehead. "Move," Amara gasped, fumbling with her seatbelt. "We have to move." They dragged themselves from the wreckage. Behind them, the pursuing vehicles had stopped on the highway, their occupants spilling out. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Amara pulled Jenna deeper into the forest, away from the road. They stumbled over fallen logs and through thick brush. Jenna was limping, her breathing ragged. "I can't," she gasped. "Go without me." "Not happening." Amara got her shoulder under Jenna's arm, taking her weight. "We're in this together now." They crashed through the undergrowth, branches tearing at their clothes. Behind them, the voices of their pursuers grew louder, closer. Then ahead in the darkness, headlights flared to life. Amara froze, squinting against the sudden brightness. A vehicle sat blocking their path. The black SUV. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, silhouetted against the headlights. Tall, broad-shouldered. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd been in worse situations than this. In his hands, he carried a rifle. "Amara Lewis," he said, his voice calm and professional. "Langley sent me. But you weren't supposed to blow your cover." Amara's hand instinctively went to her waist where her service weapon should have been. Empty, of course. She'd been disarmed during the arrest. Beside her, Jenna tensed, reaching for her own holster. "Easy," the man said, lowering his rifle. "I'm on your side." He stepped forward into the beam of his headlights, and Amara got her first clear look at him. Black, early 40s, with close-cropped hair going gray at the temples. He wore tactical pants and a dark jacket that did nothing to hide his military bearing. His eyes swept over them with the kind of assessment that only came from years of field work. "Ranger Elijah Tate," he said. "CIA ground operative. I've been shadowing you since you crossed into Wilburn County." "The black SUV," Amara said. "That was you at the traffic stop, and at the station, and following you on every back road for the last 3 days." He gestured behind them where voices were drawing closer. "We can do introductions later. Right now we need to move. Can she walk?" He nodded at Jenna, who was swaying on her feet, blood still dripping from her forehead. "I'm fine," Jenna muttered, though she clearly wasn't. Elijah moved to her other side, taking her weight. "SUV's got medical supplies. Let's go." They helped Jenna into the back seat. Elijah pulled out a first aid kit and started cleaning her wound with practiced efficiency. Amara climbed into the passenger seat, her mind racing. "Why didn't you intervene at the traffic stop?" she asked. "Orders," Elijah replied, pressing gauze to Jenna's forehead. "I was supposed to observe only. Your mission was intelligence gathering, not confrontation. Command wanted to see how deep the corruption ran before making a move. Well, congratulations. It runs all the way to the top." Amara's voice was bitter. "The sheriff, his deputies, probably half the town. And now the flash drive is in enemy hands." "I know. I watched Harrison walk out with it." "And you didn't stop him?" Elijah's jaw tightened. "My orders were to protect you, not compromise the operation. If I'd moved then, we'd have lost any chance of getting close to Caldwell." "The operation is already compromised," Amara said. "They knew I was coming. Someone tipped them off." Elijah finished bandaging Jenna's head and moved to the driver's seat. He started the engine and pulled away from the forest, taking a service road that paralleled the highway. "I know. That's why I'm here. Langley suspects there's a leak. The words hung in the air between them. A leak. Inside the CIA. It was the nightmare scenario every operative feared. Who? Amara asked quietly. That's what we need to find out. Elijah glanced at her. But whoever it is, they knew about Wildfire. They knew you were coming. They fed that information to Caldwell's people. In the back seat, Jenna had gone pale. This is bigger than I thought. Welcome to federal law enforcement, Amara said grimly, where the criminals wear suits and the corruption goes all the way up. Elijah drove them to a safe house, an old hunting cabin 15 miles outside of town. It was isolated, surrounded by forest, with only one road in or out. Inside, the furniture was sparse but functional. Elijah had clearly been using it as a base of operations. Surveillance equipment covered one wall, monitors showing various camera feeds. You've been watching the whole town, Amara observed. The airfield primarily. Also the sheriff's station, the senator's local office, and several key intersections. He pulled up footage on one of the monitors. I've documented 3 shipments in the last week alone. Trucks arriving at night, cargo transferred to small planes, then gone by morning. Amara studied the footage. The operation was even more organized than she'd thought. What's on the flash drive that has them so spooked? More than just shipping manifests. Elijah pulled up a file on his laptop. Your informant, Marcus Webb, was the mechanic at that airfield for 5 years. He didn't just service the planes. He kept records. Dates. Times. Cargo weights, photos, and most importantly, he recorded conversations. He clicked play on an audio file. Senator Caldwell's voice filled the small cabin, discussing payment schedules and delivery confirmations with someone else. The second voice belonged to Sheriff Keegan. How do you have this? Amara asked. Webb was smart. He made 2 copies. One he gave to you. The other he stashed at the bus station in a locker. Locker 42. Amara pulled out the key Jenna had returned to her. We need to get there. Already tried, Elijah said. I went there yesterday after I saw you get arrested. The locker was empty. Someone beat us to it. Amara's stomach dropped. Then we have nothing. Not nothing. Elijah closed the laptop. Webb hid a 3rd copy. He told me where before he disappeared. Disappeared? 3 days ago, right after you arrived in town. Either he ran or someone made him run. Elijah's expression was grim. Or worse. Jenna spoke up from where she'd been sitting quietly on an old couch. If there's a 3rd copy, why didn't you retrieve it yourself? Because I don't know exactly where it is. Webb told me it was somewhere he and Amara had met before. Somewhere significant to their previous contact. Amara thought back. She'd met Webb twice during the preliminary investigation. Once at a diner on the edge of town. The second time at a church parking lot. Both brief meetings, both designed to look accidental to any observer. The diner, she said. Maggie's place. He was a regular there. Then that's where we start. Elijah checked his watch. It'll be opening for breakfast in 2 hours. We go in, find whatever Webb left behind, and get out before Keegan's people realize we're there. They'll be watching every public place, Jenna said. The moment you show your face, someone will recognize you. Not if we're smart about it. Amara turned to Jenna. You're local. You know the town. Is there a back entrance to the diner? Service entrance through the kitchen, but the morning cook arrives at 5. You'd have to get in before then. Elijah nodded. Then we move now. They spent the next hour planning. Elijah had brought tactical gear, including body armor and weapons. He offered Amara a Glock, which she accepted with relief. Being armed again made her feel human. As dawn broke over the Georgia pines, they drove back toward town. Elijah parked the SUV 3 blocks from the diner, and they approached on foot through back alleys. The town was just beginning to wake. Lights flickered on in windows. Early risers emerged to collect newspapers. The diner sat on a corner, a classic chrome and neon establishment that probably hadn't changed since the 50s. Through the front windows, Amara could see it was still dark inside. The service entrance was around back next to a dumpster. Elijah made quick work of the lock. They slipped inside, moving through a small storage area into the kitchen. Industrial appliances loomed in the darkness. The smell of old grease and coffee hung in the air. "Where would he hide something?" Elijah whispered. Amara tried to think like Webb. He was cautious, paranoid, even. He wouldn't leave something valuable out in the open, but he'd also need to be able to access it quickly if necessary. Her eyes fell on a row of lockers near the back wall. Employee storage. She moved closer, trying each door. Most were locked or empty. The last one opened. Inside, tucked behind a spare apron, was a manila envelope. Amara pulled it out with shaking hands. Inside were papers, photos, and a small USB drive. "Got it," she breathed. "Then let's go," Elijah said. They turned toward the exit, but froze. Through the kitchen door, flashlights swept across the dining area. Voices, multiple people. "Back door," Jenna hissed. They ran for the service entrance, but it burst open before they could reach it. Murdoch stood there, weapon drawn, a satisfied smile on his face. "Going somewhere?" Behind him, 3 more deputies filed in, weapons raised. They were trapped. Amara's mind raced through options. They were outnumbered, outgunned. The envelope in her hands suddenly felt like the most important thing in the world. Elijah raised his rifle. "Federal agents, lower your weapons." Murdoch laughed. "Federal agents? You mean fugitives? You're all wanted for assaulting an officer, theft of evidence, and fleeing custody." He nodded to his men. "Take them." The deputies advanced. Amara backed up against the counter, clutching the envelope. She met Elijah's eyes. He gave a tiny nod. Then everything happened at once. Elijah fired a warning shot into the ceiling. The deputies dove for cover. Amara vaulted over the counter into the dining area. Jenna followed, limping but moving. They ran for the front entrance as gunfire erupted behind them. Glass shattered, wood splintered. Amara burst through the front door into the early morning light. The street was no longer empty. People had emerged at the sound of gunfire. Witnesses. Good. Witnesses meant Murdoch couldn't simply execute them. They ran toward Elijah's SUV parked 3 blocks away. Behind them, Murdoch and his men gave chase. Ahead, more patrol cars appeared, blocking their path. They were surrounded. Elijah grabbed Amara's arm. "The church. 2 blocks east. Go." They changed direction, cutting through yards and alleys. The white steeple of the church rose above the surrounding buildings. They burst through the front doors into the sanctuary, empty except for an elderly woman arranging flowers at the altar. She looked up, startled. Then her eyes went to the envelope in Amara's hands. Something flickered across her face. Recognition. "You're Webb's friend," she said quietly. Amara nodded, breathing hard. "Do you know where he is?" "Gone. Left town 3 nights ago. Said people were coming for him." She moved closer, lowering her voice. "Said he left something important. Said if you came looking, I should tell you the truth is in the light." "The light?" Amara looked around the sanctuary. Colored light streamed through stained glass windows, painting patterns on the wooden pews. "The truth is, in the light." She ran to the windows on the east wall. Each depicted a different biblical scene. The last one showed a shepherd carrying a lamb. At the bottom, a small dedication plaque read, "In memory of Marcus Webb Sr., Webb's father." This was his father's window. Amara pressed her hands against the glass, feeling along the edges. There. A small irregularity in the frame. She pulled, and a section of the wooden trim came away. Behind it, taped to the back of the frame, was a second USB drive. The backup to the backup. Outside, sirens wailed. The church doors burst open. Murdoch stormed in, his weapon raised. his face twisted with rage. "Give me that envelope," he snarled. Amara held it up but didn't hand it over. "You know what's on here, everything, every shipment, every payment, every conversation. It's over, Murdoch. The whole operation is finished." "You stupid woman," Murdoch said, his voice shaking. "You have no idea what you've done. The people you're messing with, they don't forgive. They don't forget. They'll hunt you until you're dead. Let them try." Amara slipped the second USB drive into her pocket. "Because I'm not running anymore." Behind Murdoch, Elijah appeared, his rifle trained on the deputy's back. "Drop the weapon, now." Murdoch's eyes widened. He started to turn. A shot rang out. Murdoch dropped his gun, clutching his shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers. Elijah had fired low, disabling but not killing. He kicked the deputy's weapon away and zip-tied his hands behind his back. "We need to move," he said. "This place will be crawling with his backup in seconds." They ran again, out the back of the church and into the forest beyond. The trees provided cover as they made their way back toward the safe house. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit faded into the distance. When they finally stopped, miles from town, Amara pulled out both USB drives, 2 copies of everything Webb had collected. Enough to bring down Caldwell and everyone working with him. But they still had to get the information out. And with corrupt local law, a mole in the CIA, and an entire smuggling operation that wanted them dead, that was going to be the hardest part. Elijah checked his phone. "We've got a problem. I just lost contact with my handler at Langley." Amara's blood went cold. "What does that mean?" "It means either communications are down or someone cut me off deliberately." He met her eyes. "We might be on our own." Jenna sank down onto a fallen log, her bandaged head in her hands. "What do we do now?" Amara looked at the USB drives in her palm. The evidence that could change everything. The truth that men had killed to keep hidden. "We go public," she said. "We take this to the press, to the media. We broadcast it so loud they can't cover it up." "The local news station," Jenna said, looking up. "Channel 7. I know someone who works there. She's always looking for a big story." "Then that's our next move." Amara pocketed the drives. "Wait a second. We're going to tell the whole world what Senator James Caldwell has been doing in Wilburn County. And we're going to do it live." Elijah nodded slowly. "It's risky. Once we go public, there's no taking it back." "Good," Amara said. "Because I'm done hiding." After retrieving the evidence from the church and escaping Murdoch's ambush, the trio regrouped at the safe house. Elijah spread a map across the table, marking locations with a red pen. The news station sat on the north side of town, a squat building with a transmission tower rising from its roof. "Channel 7, Jenna said, pointing to the building on the map. "My friend Sarah Mitchell works there as a production assistant. She's been trying to move up to investigative reporting for years. This story would make her career." "Can you trust her?" Amara asked. "With my life." Jenna's voice was firm. "We went to high school together. She's solid." Elijah studied the map, his expression troubled. "The station's exposed. Only 2 access points, both visible from the street. If Keegan's people are watching, we'll be spotted immediately." "Then we don't walk in," Amara said. "We need a disguise, something that gives us cover until we're inside." Jenna's eyes lit up. "The station gets deliveries every morning. Medical waste disposal, catering for the crew, equipment repairs. If we can get our hands on the right uniforms. There's an abandoned ambulance about 5 miles from here," Elijah said. "Left over from when the county hospital closed. I scouted it last week. Still has EMT uniforms in the back." They moved quickly. Within an hour, they'd retrieved the ambulance, dusty but functional, and the uniforms that came with it. Amara and Elijah changed into the blue paramedic gear while Jenna stayed in her deputy uniform, the plan being that she'd pose as their escort. As they prepared to leave, Jenna hesitated by the door. Once we do this, there's no going back. I'll lose my badge. Maybe face charges for helping you. Amara met her eyes. You don't have to come. You've already done more than enough. No. Jenna's jaw set. Right and wrong aren't about uniforms or badges. They're about choices, and I'm choosing to see this through. The words settled over them like a benediction. Amara had spent her entire career following orders, working within systems. Sometimes those systems worked, sometimes they failed. Right now, standing with a small-town cop who'd risked everything for the truth, she understood that integrity didn't come from institutions. It came from people. They climbed into the ambulance and headed toward town. The morning had given way to afternoon, the sun high and harsh. Traffic was light. A few cars passed them without a second glance. To anyone watching, they were just another emergency vehicle on a routine call. But as they approached the checkpoint at the town's edge, Amara's instincts prickled. 2 patrol cars sat blocking the road, deputies checking every vehicle that passed through. Keegan had locked down the town. They're searching for us, Elijah muttered from the driver's seat. Stay calm, Amara said. We're EMTs. We have a patient to transport. Just play it natural. They rolled up to the checkpoint. A deputy approached, young and nervous-looking. He peered through the window at Elijah, then back at Jenna in the rear. What's your business? He asked. Prisoner transport, Jenna called from the back. Got a suspect who needs medical evaluation before processing. The deputy's eyes narrowed. I wasn't notified of any transports today. Last-minute order from Sheriff Keegan, Jenna said smoothly. You can call it in if you want, but he's not going to be happy about delays. The mention of Keegan's name worked like magic. The deputy stepped back and waved them through. Go ahead, but keep your radio on. They passed the checkpoint and continued toward the station. Amara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That was too close, Elijah said. It's going to get closer, Amara replied. Once we're inside that station, every cop in the county will know where we are. The Channel 7 building appeared ahead, its parking lot half full of cars and news vans. They pulled around to the service entrance where a loading dock sat empty. Perfect. Jenna called her friend. Sarah, it's me. I need a huge favor, and I need you not to ask questions until I explain everything. Can you meet me at the service entrance? Right now? A pause. Then, I'll be there in 2 minutes. They waited, every second stretching. Amara clutched the USB drives in her pocket, their weight a constant reminder of what was at stake. Finally, the service door opened. A young black woman emerged, petite with natural hair pulled back in a bun. She wore jeans and a Channel 7 staff shirt. Jenna? Sarah's eyes went wide as she took in the ambulance, the uniforms, the tense expressions. What's going on? I'll explain inside, Jenna said, but I need you to get us into the studio without anyone seeing us. Can you do that? Sarah looked between them, her journalist's instincts clearly fighting with her loyalty to her friend. Finally, she nodded. Follow me, and whatever this is, it better be worth my job. It's worth a lot more than that, Amara said. Sarah led them through a maze of hallways, past editing bays and equipment storage. They could hear voices from the main studio, the bustle of a newsroom preparing for the evening broadcast. Sarah stopped at a door marked Production Room B. This studio's not being used today, she said, unlocking it, but I can patch you into the main broadcast feed from here. Now someone want to tell me what's happening? Amara pulled out the USB drives. How would you like to break the biggest story in Georgia history? Over the next 20 minutes, she explained everything. The weapons smuggling, Senator Caldwell's involvement, the corruption in local law enforcement, Webb's evidence. Sarah's eyes grew wider with each revelation. This is insane, she breathed, if even half of this is true. It's all true, Jenna said. I've seen it myself. The airfield shipments, the covered-up investigations. Keegan's been dirty for years. Sarah turned to her computer. Okay. I can set this up. We'll need to preempt the evening news. Go live with it. But you realize the moment we do this, every powerful person in the state will try to shut us down? Let them try, Amara said. By the time they react, the truth will already be out there. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up files, checking feeds. I'll need 20 minutes to set everything up. Can you give me that? We don't have 20 minutes, Elijah said, his voice tight. He was looking at his phone. I just picked up police chatter. Keegan knows we're in the area. He's mobilizing everyone. Then we work faster. Sarah turned to Amara. You'll go on camera. Tell the story. I'll cut in footage from the USB drive as you talk. Visual evidence to back up your claims. Amara nodded. She'd never wanted to be the face of this operation. She'd spent her career in shadows, working invisibly. But sometimes the shadows weren't enough. Sometimes you had to step into the light. Jenna moved to the window and peered through the blinds. We've got company. 3 patrol cars just pulled into the parking lot. How long until we can broadcast? Elijah asked. 10 minutes, Sarah said, not looking up from her computer. We don't have 10 minutes. Elijah chambered around in his rifle. I'll buy you time. Jenna, help me barricade the doors. They moved furniture, stacking tables and chairs against the entrances. It wouldn't hold for long, but it might give them the minutes they needed. Amara sat in front of the camera, her heart pounding. Sarah clipped a microphone to her collar. When the red light comes on, you're live, Sarah said. Speak clearly. Don't look at the camera, look at me. Tell your story like you're telling a friend. Outside, footsteps pounded in the hallway. Voices shouted. Someone hammered on the door. Open up, this is the police. Ignore them, Sarah said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. 5 more minutes. The hammering intensified. Then came a different sound. Drilling. They were going through the lock. 3 minutes, Sarah said. A crash. The door shook in its frame. The barricade held, but barely. Sarah, Elijah said quietly, whatever happens, don't stop that broadcast. 2 minutes. The door splintered. Hands reached through the gap, trying to move the furniture blocking the entrance. Elijah positioned himself between the door and the studio area, his rifle raised. 1 minute. The red light on the camera flared to life. Sarah pointed at Amara. You're live. Go. Amara took a breath and looked directly into the lens. For a moment, the chaos around her faded. It was just her and the truth. My name is Amara Lewis, she began, her voice steady. I'm a field operative with the Central Intelligence Agency. 3 days ago, I was arrested by Wilburn County Sheriff's Department while conducting a classified investigation. What I'm about to share with you is the result of months of intelligence gathering, and it involves corruption at the highest levels of government. Behind her, the door burst open. Murdoch stumbled through, his shoulder bandaged, his face twisted with rage. Cut that camera! Cut it now! Keep talking, Sarah hissed. Amara continued. Senator James Caldwell has been operating an illegal weapons smuggling ring, using a private airfield in Wilburn County. Military-grade weapons stolen from authorized dealers have been shipped overseas to conflict zones. Local law enforcement, including Sheriff Don Keegan, has provided protection for these operations in exchange for payment. Murdoch lunged forward. Elijah stepped into his path, the 2 men grappling. They crashed into the barricade, sending chairs scattering. On the monitor beside the camera, Sarah was cutting in footage from the USB drives. Shipping manifests. Photos of the airfield at night with trucks unloading cargo. Financial records showing payments from shell corporations to Keegan's personal accounts. This evidence was compiled by Marcus Webb, Amara said, a mechanic who worked at the airfield for 5 years. Mr. Webb documented every shipment, every transaction, every conversation. He risked his life to expose this operation. 3 days ago, he disappeared. His current whereabouts are unknown. More officers poured through the door. Jenna stood her ground, her weapon drawn but not aimed at anyone. "Don't make me shoot," she said. "This is bigger than all of us." One of the deputies hesitated, lowering his weapon. "Brooks, what are you doing?" "My job," Jenna said. "Protecting and serving. Actually doing it, not just pretending." The monitor now showed audio transcripts, conversations between Caldwell and Keegan discussing shipment schedules, payment amounts, and how to handle witnesses who asked too many questions. Senator Caldwell used his position and influence to facilitate these crimes. Amara continued. He exploited his military connections, his political power, and the trust of the American people. And when someone threatened to expose him, he used law enforcement to silence them. A sound like thunder filled the room. For a moment, Amara thought someone had fired a weapon. Then she realized it was coming from outside. Helicopters. The distinctive thump of rotor blades. Through the window, she could see them descending. Black helicopters with no visible markings. CIA. Elijah looked up, his face grim. "They're not here to rescue us." The officers in the room had frozen, staring at the windows. Even Murdoch had stopped struggling. Everyone understood what those helicopters meant. This had escalated beyond local law enforcement. The federal government was involved now. But Amara kept talking. "I was arrested because I got too close to the truth. My credentials were verified, then ignored. I was held without being allowed to contact my superiors. Sheriff Keegan attempted to have me transferred to an off-site location where I could be permanently silenced. This is not law enforcement. This is a cover-up." The studio door opened again. This time it wasn't local police. Men in tactical gear entered, weapons raised, moving with military precision. Federal agents. But which agency? And whose side were they on? The lead agent pulled off his helmet. He was white, in his 50s, with hard eyes and a scar running along his jaw. "Shut down this broadcast immediately." "On whose authority?" Sarah demanded, still filming. "Director Harris, CIA Internal Security. This broadcast is compromising an ongoing operation." "The only operation being compromised is the cover-up." Amara shot back, still facing the camera. "Director Harris works in the same division as Deputy Director Raymond Blake, the man who leaked information about my mission to Senator Caldwell's people." Harris's expression didn't change, but his eyes flickered. That small tell told Amara everything she needed to know. She'd guessed right about the mole. Raymond Blake betrayed the CIA. Amara continued, her voice rising. He fed classified intelligence to a senator running illegal weapons. He compromised agents in the field. He put American lives at risk for profit, and he's not alone. There are others in Langley who've been protecting Caldwell's operation for years. On the monitor, Sarah pulled up financial records showing payments from Caldwell's shell corporations to numbered accounts. One of those accounts, Amara knew from Webb's notes, belonged to Blake. Across the country, in offices and homes and restaurants, people were watching. The broadcast had gone out on Channel 7's regular frequency, but Sarah had also streamed it online. It was spreading. Social media was exploding with shares and comments. The truth was escaping, impossible to contain now. Harris took a step toward Amara. "Agent Lewis, you are in violation of your security clearance. You will cease this broadcast immediately and surrender yourself into custody." "No." Amara stood facing him. "I won't. Because if I do, this evidence disappears. The investigation gets buried, and Senator Caldwell keeps selling weapons while American agents die in the field." For a moment, nobody moved. The tactical team waited for Harris's order. The local deputies watched, uncertain. Elijah kept his weapon trained on Murdoch. Jenna stood between Amara and the federal agents. Then Sarah's phone rang. She answered it, listened for a moment, and her eyes went wide. "It's the director, Director Cole Stanton. He wants to speak to Agent Lewis." Harris's face went pale. "That's impossible. The director hasn't been briefed on this situation." "He has now," Sarah said, holding out her phone. "The whole country has." Amara took the phone. Director Stanton. Agent Lewis. His voice was calm, controlled. I'm watching your broadcast. Is everything you've stated accurate? Yes, sir. I have documentary evidence to support every claim. A pause. Then continue. You have my authorization. Director Harris, stand down. This operation is now under my direct authority. Harris's jaw clenched, but he lowered his weapon. His team followed suit. The power dynamic in the room had shifted in an instant. Amara handed the phone back to Sarah and returned to the camera. Deputy Director Raymond Blake has been compromised. Director Stanton is now aware of the situation. The CIA will be conducting a full internal investigation. She pulled the USB drives from her pocket and held them up to the camera. These contain 5 years of evidence, shipping manifests, financial transactions, audio recordings, photos, everything you need to understand how deep this corruption runs. Copies of this evidence have already been sent to the Department of Justice, the FBI, and multiple media outlets. The truth is out there now. It can't be hidden anymore. Behind her, Elijah suddenly staggered. He'd been standing guard, his rifle pointed at the door. When the shot came through the shattered door frame, the bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He dropped to one knee, blood spreading across his shirt. Amara dove for him as more gunfire erupted. Not from the federal agents or the local deputies. From outside the building. Through the windows, she could see figures in civilian clothes, armed with automatic weapons. Mercenaries. Caldwell's last resort. Get down, Jenna screamed, pulling Sarah behind a desk. The windows exploded inward. Glass rained across the studio. The federal tactical team returned fire, their weapons chattering. Chaos erupted. Smoke filled the air. Alarms shrieked. But through it all, the camera kept rolling. The red light stayed on. The broadcast continued. Amara pressed her hands against Elijah's wound, trying to stop the bleeding. He looked up at her, his face pale but his eyes alert. "Don't stop now," he gasped. "Finish it." She crawled back to the camera, glass crunching under her knees. Her hands were bloody. Her shirt was torn. But she kept talking. "Senator Caldwell has just sent armed mercenaries to stop this broadcast. They're firing on federal agents and law enforcement officers. They're trying to kill anyone who knows the truth. If something happens to me, if this broadcast suddenly cuts out, you'll know why. You'll know that a United States senator ordered the murder of a CIA agent on American soil." More gunfire. Someone screamed. The building shook as an explosion ripped through the parking lot. The helicopters outside were landing, CIA reinforcements pouring out. On the monitor, Sarah was still cutting in footage, her hands shaking but steady. Photos of Caldwell meeting with known arms dealers. Bank statements showing millions in illegal transfers. Everything Webb had documented, now visible to millions of viewers. "This is what corruption looks like," Amara said, her voice hoarse. "This is what happens when powerful people believe they're above the law. But they're not. No one is. And today, the truth wins." The gunfire stopped. In the sudden silence, Amara could hear sirens. Lots of them. FBI, state police, federal marshals. The cavalry had arrived. Through the shattered windows, she watched as men in suits emerged from cars, flashing badges. Arrest warrants were being served. Hands were going up in surrender. Keegan was pulled from a patrol car, handcuffs snapping around his wrists. Murdoch was hauled away, still bleeding from his shoulder wound. And somewhere, in Washington, D.C., Senator James Caldwell was watching his empire collapse in real time. Sarah tapped Amara's shoulder. "We've been live for 37 minutes. Every major news network in the country has picked up our feed. You did it." Amara looked at the camera one last time. "My name is Amara Lewis. I'm a CIA agent, and I've just told you the truth. What happens next is up to all of you." The red light went dark. The broadcast ended. Amara slumped against the wall, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. Elijah was being tended to by paramedics. real ones this time. Jenna sat on the floor, her head in her hands, crying quietly. Harris and his tactical team were securing the building, stepping over debris and spent shell casings. It was over. The operation had burned to the ground, but from those ashes, the truth had emerged. Sarah knelt beside Amara. "You're bleeding." Amara looked down. A piece of glass had embedded itself in her arm. She hadn't even noticed. "I'll live." "Yeah," Sarah said, a small smile crossing her face. "You will. And you just became the most famous whistleblower in America." Outside, the sun was setting. Cameras flashed as journalists swarmed the scene. Someone helped Amara to her feet and guided her toward the exit. She walked out into the golden light, squinting against the brightness, and faced a wall of reporters. Questions came from every direction, cameras focused on her face. But she said nothing. She'd already said everything that mattered. In her pocket, the USB drives remained, evidence of a conspiracy that had just been exposed to the world. The truth, finally free after years in the shadows. As medics loaded her into an ambulance, Amara caught sight of Jenna being escorted by FBI agents. Their eyes met. Jenna nodded once, a gesture of respect and solidarity. Then she was gone. The ambulance doors closed. Amara leaned back and closed her eyes. Tomorrow there would be interviews, depositions, congressional hearings, the long, grinding work of justice. But tonight, she could rest. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same again. The broadcast had ended, but the fallout was just beginning. Amara spent the night in a secure medical facility outside Atlanta, her arm stitched and bandaged. Federal agents posted at every entrance. The glass wound had been superficial, but the doctors insisted on observation. Really, it was protective custody dressed up as medical care. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the chaos of the studio, the gunfire, Elijah falling, the red light of the camera that had broadcast everything to millions of viewers. She'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She'd burned her career, her cover, her entire life in the shadows. All for the truth. The question was whether it had been worth it. At dawn, 2 agents entered her room. Both white men in dark suits, their expressions carefully neutral. "Agent Lewis, you're being transferred to Langley. Director Stanton wants to see you." The drive to Virginia took hours. They traveled in a convoy, 3 black SUVs with tinted windows. Nobody spoke. Amara watched the landscape blur past, familiar highways becoming unfamiliar territory. She'd worked for the CIA for 8 years. She'd never imagined returning like this, as something between a hero and a prisoner. Langley's headquarters rose like a fortress against the gray morning sky. They entered through a secure entrance, bypassing the public areas. Down corridors she'd walked 1,000 times, past offices where colleagues pointedly didn't meet her eyes. Word had spread. Everyone knew what she'd done. They brought her to a conference room on the 7th floor. No windows, a long table surrounded by chairs, and at the head of that table sat Director Cole Stanton, his silver hair immaculate, his face carved from stone. "Agent Lewis," he said. "Sit." She sat. The agents who'd escorted her took positions by the door. Stanton opened a folder, though Amara suspected he already knew every word it contained. "In the past 72 hours, you have violated your security clearance, compromised an active intelligence operation, disclosed classified information to the press, and caused a national security incident that has reached the desk of the President of the United States. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" "I did my job," Amara said quietly. "I exposed corruption. I brought criminals to justice. You went rogue. You acted without authorization. You put civilians at risk. The civilians were already at risk. Sheriff Keegan was planning to have me killed. If I hadn't acted, the evidence would have disappeared and Caldwell's operation would still be running." Stanton closed the folder. Senator Caldwell was arrested last night at his home in Georgetown. Deputy Director Blake is currently being interrogated. Sheriff Keegan and 12 deputies from Wilburn County are in federal custody. The weapons smuggling operation has been completely dismantled. He paused. You got results, Agent Lewis. But at what cost? Before Amara could answer, the door opened. A man entered and her blood turned to ice. Raymond Blake, her former partner. The man who'd trained her. The man who'd betrayed everything the CIA stood for. He looked older than she remembered. Lines etched deep around his mouth, gray streaking his dark hair, but his eyes were the same. Cold, calculating. The eyes of someone who'd convinced himself that every compromise was justified. Ray, Amara said, her voice flat. Amara. He took a seat across from her, flanked by 2 more agents. I hear you've been busy. You leaked my mission to Caldwell. You got Marcus Webb killed or driven into hiding. You put a target on my back. I protected national security. Blake said. Caldwell's operation was providing weapons to Allied forces in contested regions. It was off the books, yes, but it served American interests. It was illegal. It was murder for profit, and you helped cover it up. Blake's jaw tightened. You don't understand the complexity of intelligence work. Sometimes we have to work with people who aren't clean. Sometimes we have to look the other way to achieve larger strategic goals. No. Amara leaned forward. That's not intelligence work. That's corruption. And you convinced yourself it was patriotism because it was easier than admitting you were taking money to betray your country. Enough. Stanton's voice cut through the tension. Deputy Director Blake, you're here to answer questions, not debate ethics with Agent Lewis. But Amara wasn't done. How much did he pay you, Ray? How much was your integrity worth? Because I saw the bank records. Webb documented everything. I know exactly how much money went into your accounts from Caldwell's shell corporations. Blake's face flushed red. You think you're a hero? You're a traitor. You exposed sensitive CIA operations on national television. You gave our enemies a roadmap to how we operate. You think the truth was worth that? Yes. Amara's voice was steel. Because the truth is the only weapon that matters. You built your career on lies. You built an empire on corruption. I built mine on exposing people like you. For a long moment, they stared at each other across the table. 8 years of partnership, of trust, of shared missions and late nights and believing they were fighting for the same things. All of it reduced to this. 2 people on opposite sides of an unbridgeable divide. Blake broke first. He looked away, his shoulders slumping. I did what I thought was right. No, Amara said softly. You did what was easy. There's a difference. Stanton stood. Deputy Director Blake, you're dismissed. Your security clearance is revoked pending the conclusion of the internal investigation. Agent Lewis, remain here. Blake left without another word. The door closed behind him, and suddenly the room felt larger, emptier. Stanton sat back down. The media is calling you a hero, a whistleblower, the next great defender of truth in government. What do you think? I think I'm tired, Amara admitted. I think I did what needed to be done, and now I have to live with the consequences. The consequences are complex. Stanton pulled out another folder. Officially, the CIA cannot condone your actions. You violated protocols. You endangered operations. You made us look incompetent on the national stage. He paused. Unofficially, you exposed a cancer that had been eating away at this agency for years. Blake wasn't working alone. We've identified 6 other officers who were involved in various aspects of Caldwell's operation. Your broadcast gave us the evidence we needed to clean house. So what happens to me? That depends on you. Stanton opened the folder. Option 1. You're terminated from the CIA, stripped of clearance. You spend the next decade testifying in trials and living with a target on your back from everyone you exposed. Amara had expected that. And option 2, you're reinstated, full clearance restored. We assign you to internal affairs to help root out the remaining corruption. You become the face of the new CIA, the reformed agency that holds itself accountable. It was a trap disguised as an opportunity. Amara saw it clearly. They wanted to control the narrative, make her part of the solution so she couldn't keep being part of the problem. I want option 3, she said. Stanton raised an eyebrow. There is no option 3. There is now. You reinstate me, but I go back to field work. No desk job. No political assignments. I work operations. Real operations. The kind that actually matter. After everything that's happened, you want to go back into the field? It's what I'm good at. It's where I belong. Amara met his gaze steadily. You need people you can trust. People who won't be bought or compromised. I just proved I'm that person. Stanton considered her for a long moment. You're asking for the impossible. Every intelligence agency in the world knows your face now. You can't work covertly anymore. Then I work overtly. I'm the agent everyone knows exists. The one corrupt officials fear because they know I won't look the other way. Amara leaned forward. You want to rebuild trust in the CIA? Show the American people that we actually hold ourselves to the standards we claim. Let me be the example. A small smile crossed Stanton's face. You're either very brave or very foolish. Both, probably. He closed the folder. I'll take your proposal to the review board, no promises. But Agent Lewis, for what it's worth, you did good work. Messy work, complicated work, but good work. It wasn't approval, but it was something. Amara stood. When do I hear their decision? Soon. In the meantime, you're on administrative leave. Don't leave the D.C. area. And Agent Lewis, watch your back. Caldwell had a lot of friends. Not all of them have been arrested yet. She left Langley feeling unmoored. For the first time in years, she had no mission, no objective, no clear path forward. Just questions and consequences and the weight of what she'd done. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Turn on the news. She found a television and a waiting area. CNN was showing footage of the Capitol. A crowd had gathered, protesters holding signs. Thank you, Agent Lewis. Truth over power. Heroes don't hide. The news anchor's voice carried over the footage. The Senate has announced emergency hearings into Senator Caldwell's weapons smuggling operation. Multiple senators have called for reforms to intelligence oversight, and public opinion polls show overwhelming support for CIA agent Amara Lewis, whose broadcast 3 days ago has ignited a national conversation about accountability in government. 3 days, it felt like a lifetime. Another text came through. This one from Jenna. They promoted me. Acting sheriff of Wilburn County. First thing I did was fire everyone who worked with Keegan. Want to grab coffee sometime? I owe you one. Amara smiled. At least something good had come from the chaos. She walked out of Langley into a cold afternoon. Reporters waited at the gates, cameras ready. Questions shouted from every direction. She ignored them all and kept walking until she found a quiet park a few blocks away. She sat on a bench and pulled out a photograph she'd carried in her wallet for years. Her father in his CIA uniform, young and proud, before the mission that killed him, before the cover-up that destroyed her mother, before everything that had driven Amara to follow in his footsteps. You were right, Dad, she whispered to the photograph. The truth was the weapon. It cost everything. But it was worth it. The evening news would run more stories. The hearings would continue. The trials would drag on for months. But right now, in this quiet moment, Amara allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. 4 months later, autumn had settled over Virginia with crisp air and golden leaves. Amara stood at Arlington National Cemetery, her hand resting on cold marble. Her father's grave. She visited every few weeks now, when the weight of everything threatened to overwhelm her. Agent Lewis. She turned. Elijah Tate approached, his arm still in a sling but moving easier than the last time she'd seen him. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, and a jacket, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him in the field. Elijah, how's the shoulder? Better. Doctors say I'll be back to full duty in another month. He stood beside her, looking at the gravestone. Major Richard Lewis, your father was a good man. You knew him? Met him once, years ago. He was giving a lecture at Quantico about field operations in hostile territory. Said something I never forgot. The mission isn't about coming home. It's about making sure the truth does. Elijah glanced at her. Guess you took that to heart. Guess I did. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Finally, Elijah spoke again. I heard the review board made their decision. They did. Reinstated me. Full clearance. And they actually went for option 3. Field work? Field work. Apparently. Director, Stanton convinced them that having a public face for CIA accountability might actually help recruitment. Show the world we're serious about reform. Are you serious about it? Amara smiled. I'm still figuring that out. Well, when you do, let me know. They offered me a partnership position. Said I'd be working with an agent who specialized in high-profile corruption cases. Didn't take a genius to figure out who. You'd want to work with me again, after everything that happened? Especially after everything that happened. Elijah's expression was serious. You're the real deal, Lewis. Most agents talk about honor and duty. You actually live it. That's rare. Before Amara could respond, her phone buzzed. She checked it and her eyebrows rose. Speaking of rare, Jenna's in town. Asked if I wanted to meet for lunch. The sheriff? Acting sheriff. She's still getting used to it. Amara pocketed her phone. You want to come? Fair warning. She's probably going to try to recruit us both for some local law enforcement training program she's developing. Sounds terrible. I'm in. They found Jenna at a small cafe near the National Mall. She stood when they entered, looking different in civilian clothes. More confident, less uncertain. The past 4 months had changed her too. Amara, Elijah. Jenna hugged them both. It's good to see you. How are you healing? Slower than I'd like, Elijah admitted, but I'll survive. They sat and ordered coffee. For a while they just talked, about nothing important, about everything except the chaos that had brought them together. It felt normal, easy, like they were just friends catching up instead of 3 people who'd nearly died together. Finally, Jenna pulled out an envelope. This came to the sheriff's office last week. It's addressed to you, Amara, from Marcus Webb. Amara's heart skipped. Webb? He's alive? Apparently. Living in Canada under a new name. He didn't give details, just said he wanted you to have this. Amara opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter, handwritten in neat script. Agent Lewis, if you're reading this, it means you succeeded. The truth is out. Caldwell and his people are behind bars. I can't thank you enough for having the courage to do what I couldn't. I documented everything, but I ran when things got dangerous. You stayed and fought. That makes you a hero in my book. The enclosed is for you. Use it however you see fit. Respectfully, Marcus Webb. A second item fell from the envelope. A small medal. Amara recognized it immediately. The Intelligence Star, one of the CIA's highest honors. But this one was old, tarnished, and engraved on the back was a name. Richard Lewis, her father's medal. The one that had been buried with him, or so she'd thought. How did Webb get this? She whispered. Jenna leaned forward. There was a note for me, too. He said your father gave it to him years ago. They worked together on something classified. Webb was supposed to return it to your family, but he never got the chance. He held on to it all these years, waiting for the right moment. Amara clutched the medal, feeling the weight of it. Her father's legacy. His sacrifice. Everything he'd stood for, now in her hands. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "There's more." Jenna pulled out a folder. The Senate passed the Transparency and Intelligence Act. It's being called the Lewis Act, after you. It mandates independent oversight of CIA operations, protections for whistleblowers, and regular audits of classified programs. You changed the system, Amara. Really changed it. One person didn't do that. We all did. Amara looked between them. You risked your career, Jenna. Elijah took a bullet. Webb spent years gathering evidence. Sarah broadcast the truth when she could have shut us down. This was never about one person being a hero. It was about people choosing to do the right thing when it mattered. Spoken like someone who's terrible at accepting compliments, Elijah said with a grin. They laughed, and for a moment the weight lifted. They were just 3 people who'd survived something terrible and come out the other side. After lunch, Jenna returned to Georgia. Elijah went to physical therapy. And Amara found herself walking through the city, no destination in mind, just moving. She ended up at the Lincoln Memorial as the sun began to set. Tourists milled around, taking photos, reading the inscriptions. She sat on the steps and watched the day fade into evening. Her phone buzzed again. This time a message from Director Stanton. "New assignment if you're interested. Corruption case in Chicago. High profile, dangerous. Right up your alley." Amara stared at the message. This was it. The moment she decided who she was going to be. The agent who stayed safe, who followed orders, who never made waves. Or the agent who went where the truth led, consequences be damned. She typed a response. "Send me the details, I'm in." Another message came through immediately. A file. Operation Phoenix. Already they were using dramatic names. She opened it and began to read. A city councilman with ties to organized crime, money laundering, political corruption. Everything she'd just fought against. Happening again in another place. The work never ended. There would always be another corrupt official, another cover-up, another fight for truth against people who preferred comfortable lies. But now Amara understood something she hadn't before. That was okay. The fight was the point. Not winning every battle, but showing up for every battle, being the person who refused to look away when it was easier, who spoke up when staying silent was safer. Who chose truth over comfort, every single time. She closed her phone and looked up at Lincoln's statue. "You probably dealt with this too," she said quietly. "People who said you were going too far, that you were destroying the country you were trying to save. But you kept going, anyway, because it was right." The statue, of course, didn't answer, but somehow Amara felt heard. She stood and started walking back toward her apartment. Tomorrow, she'd read the full Operation Phoenix file. She'd start planning. She'd dive back into the shadows and the secrets and the endless complexity of trying to do good in a world that often rewarded the opposite. But tonight, she'd rest. Tonight, she'd hold her father's medal and remember why she'd chosen this life in the first place, not for glory, not for recognition, but because someone had to stand between corruption and justice. Someone had to be willing to pay the price for truth. As she walked, her phone buzzed one more time. A news alert. Former Senator Caldwell sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Sheriff Keegan receives 15 years. Deputy Director Blake awaiting trial. Justice. Slow, imperfect, but real. Amara smiled and kept walking. The city lights flickered on around her, thousands of windows glowing in the darkness. Behind each one, people living their lives, mostly unaware of the battles fought in the shadows to keep them safe. That was okay too. They didn't need to know. The work itself was reward enough. She reached her apartment building and climbed the stairs to her floor. Inside, her space was sparse, functional, ready to be abandoned at a moment's notice if a mission called. That's how field agents lived, always prepared to move, always ready for the next fight. But now, for the first time, she added something permanent. She placed her father's medal on the mantel, where she'd see it every morning. A reminder, a promise, a legacy worth living up to. Her phone buzzed again. Elijah. Heard you took the Chicago case. Room for a partner? She smiled and typed back. Always. Outside, the night deepened. Somewhere in Chicago, corrupt officials were sleeping soundly, believing they were untouchable, believing no one would ever expose their crimes, believing the system would protect them forever. They were wrong, because Amara Lewis was coming, and she always brought the truth with her. She settled into her chair by the window and opened the Operation Phoenix file. Tomorrow, she'd fly to Chicago. Tomorrow, the work would begin again. Tomorrow, she'd step back into the shadows. But tonight, in this quiet moment, she allowed herself to feel what she'd accomplished. The lives changed, the corruption exposed, the justice served. Her father would have been proud. She was proud of herself, too. And that after everything was enough. The city hummed outside her window, alive with possibility and danger and truth waiting to be uncovered. Amara Lewis closed her eyes and smiled. The shadows called, and she was ready to answer. When the system itself is corrupt and speaking the truth means losing everything you've built, would you have the courage to risk it all like Amara did? If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of courage, justice, and redemption.